After 14 years of not receiving a proper Bleach console game, Bleach Rebirth of Souls makes its way onto modern platforms in style. Now I know what you might be thinking, isn't this just another simple anime fighter? Well, you might be surprised. You see, Rebirth of Souls is filled to the brim with many deep mechanics that even traditional fighting game players will love digging into. While there is a lengthy tutorial and the training mode has plenty of features to help you practice and deal with certain situations, you still have to know how the entire combat system synergizes together. So whether you're an outsider just trying to get a glimpse of the combat system, someone who's trying to brute force their way through the story mode, or someone who's trying to win a lot in online matches, this video will give you everything you need to know to make you feel like you're number one.
Tensa Zangetsu.
So before we get into the rest of this guide, there's a few basic terminology and mechanics within the game that need to be explained. After getting a good understanding of what these things are, you'll have just enough information to follow the rest of the guide without being confused. So let's get started. Quick attacks are one of your main attack buttons that you use to hit the opponent by pressing the square or X button. Upon hitting the opponent with a quick attack, you can repeatedly mash the square or X button for an auto combo. These are either safe or unsafe on block, depending on the character. Flash attacks are another main attack button that you use to hit the opponent by pressing the triangle or Y button. These do a lot more damage than quick attacks and can also be converted into an auto combo by repeatedly pressing the triangle or Y button. But on the downside, they are generally unsafe on block. Additionally, you have another attack button called a special flash attack. This attack is done by pressing up and triangle or Y at the same time. These are great for attacking at longer distances that your quick and flash attacks can't reach. Alongside these regular attacks, you have two special moves you can use called spiritual pressure moves. These moves use the yellow Ryatsu gauge to bring out different kinds of attacks that give you varying benefits. Spiritual pressure move 1 can be done by pressing L2 plus triangle or LT plus Y at the same time. Alternatively, spiritual pressure move 2 can be done by pressing L2 plus circle or LT plus B at the same time. Every character also has something called a signature move. This can be done by pressing the circle or B button. Some characters require you to hold the button to give the move more power. Depending on the character, these moves will either attack the opponent, parry attacks, or change your character's moveset. With all these different attacks in mind, attacks will lose to someone that is blocking. Blocking incoming attacks is done by holding the LB or L1 button, and as alluded to before, if you use a move that's unsafe on block, you can expect to be punished. But these blocks will lose to an attack called a breaker, which is essentially this game's version of a throw. With these three options together, there's an interesting rock paper scissors dynamic where you have to predict which option your opponent would choose. Lastly, there are two powerful attacks in Rebirth of Souls that you should keep in mind: Hakugeki's and Kikon moves. Hakugeki attacks are a slow moving strike that sends your opponent flying away on hit. This is done by pressing RT or R2, and if you keep holding the button after the hit, you can send out your ultimate attack, which is called a Kikon move, which is used to deplete the opponent's stocks or Konpaku. More on that later. Now that you've gotten an understanding of the basic tools and mechanics, let's start getting into the important phases of the game, starting with neutral. So first, let's talk about the neutral game of Rebirth of Souls. For those who don't know, neutral is a situation in fighting games where neither player is blocking or getting hit by anything. Both players are walking around, playing it safe, and trying to score some damage. You have a lot of ways to do this in Rebirth of Souls, so let's go over them together. The Hoho Flash Step mechanic is one of the great options to use in neutral. By pressing L2 plus X or LT plus A at the same time, it uses some of your reverse gauge to instantly teleport behind your opponent so that you can start going for attacks. It's pretty useful for dealing with characters who like to throw out projectiles so that you can catch them and punish them on their recovery. Just be careful, as it is very punishable if you become too predictable with it, which we'll cover in just a second. You also have the ability to use Hoho Flash Step as a parry. If you use it framed perfectly on a projectile or normal attack, you will teleport behind the opponent in a cool cinematic cutscene and punish them. Playing passively in neutral by walking around and blocking is also very effective. This allows you to block incoming attacks and go for punishes, wait for the opponent to whiff a button and punish, or react to the opponent's Hoho Flash Step move and counter. To counter a Hoho Flash Step easily, just make sure to react with your attack the moment your opponent disappears. It's very similar to the way how you counter vanishes in Dragon Ball FighterZ. Throwing out attacks proactively in neutral is also a way to score damage in a game. Similar to the way how pokes work in other fighting games, you are trying to occupy the space in front of you and remind your opponent not to try and come closer. If you're fighting against players who like to run at you all the time, this is pretty great for putting a stop sign in front of their face. For all you combo enthusiasts out there, you can create even more damage by using the chain reverse mechanic. This is similar to Guilty Gear's Roman cancel mechanic for anyone familiar with that series, but if you're not, essentially by pressing LT plus square or LT plus X at the same time after hitting the opponent, you cancel your move's recovery and slow the game down for a moment, giving you more time to follow up with another attack that you normally wouldn't be able to follow up with. All of this comes at the cost of your whole reverse gauge meter. Moreover, if you send your opponent flying with an attack, you can use the Hoho mechanic to instantly teleport right behind them and continue to combo. Just keep in mind that the opponent can use a mechanic called Burst Reverse, which uses their reverse gauge to break out of combos. This mechanic is also done by pressing L2 plus square or LT plus X at the same time, but only when you're getting hit. You can try to beat this by doing a Hoho Flash Step if you predict it, but it's very hard to time, so do it with caution. Movement also plays a core factor in scoring damage in Rebirth of Souls. Using side steps and back steps are pretty helpful in making the opponent's attacks miss. If you are close enough, you can even punish them afterwards. Additionally, if the opponent is playing a little bit too passively, you can just dash at them and start attacking. If they aren't willing to take the initiative, why not do it yourself? Having said all of this, it's important to mention that your character's spiritual pressure moves and signature moves can also be useful in neutral. Some of these moves will be parries, forward advancing attacks, pokes, and much more. One last thing to go over in this section is the soul reverse mechanic. Upon using the reverse gauge in neutral by pressing L2 plus square or LT plus X, your health bar will start to heal over time and your side steps and dashes will be much faster. Additionally, it restores your Ryatsu gauge when activated. Of course, these benefits will only last for a certain period of time, but it's great to use if you're ever in a situation where you need to gain some health back. As you can see, the neutral game in Rebirth of Souls is packed with things you can do, and it's up to you to decide the best way to utilize your various resources. But eventually, you'll find yourself in a situation where you and your opponent are up close. So what do you do in these circumstances? One of the most important things to know in any fighting game is what to do after a knockdown. This is commonly called okizeme or oki in the world of fighting games, which is a situation where your opponent is knocked down and you're able to pressure them with several strong options while they're getting up, while the other player has very limited options to deal with that pressure. This concept very much exists in Rebirth of Souls and is extremely important to learn. Your flash attack auto combo knocks the opponent down, so you can use this as a way to start your oki. After knocking the opponent down, you can go for a well-timed flash attack that hits the opponent right as they get up. This is called a meaty attack, and is great for beating people who like to mash attacks on their wake up. Some characters may have to dash to get their attack to hit as a meaty, while others can just attack right afterward due to their long range and still have their attack hit right when the opponent gets up. Characters can even use their special flash attacks to hit the opponent on their wake up. This is pretty useful to use if you are fighting against a character who you can't dash forward in midi because they have a faster wake up button or their button just clashes with yours. Some opponents may like to sidestep or backstep on wake up to avoid these attacks, so if you see that tendency, it's important to just dash forward for a bit longer to catch them later. Once you condition your opponent to block one wake up, you can then go for a breaker. Characters who don't have to dash to get a midi can just charge their breaker and it will move them forward. If you encounter someone who defaults to throw second on wake up, after you end your flash attack combo, you can just dash forward, dash backwards to make their throw with, and dash back in to go for the punish. This is called a shimmy in most fighting games, and I'm glad to see it in here as an option to bait out throw. Lastly, you'll come across opponents who will try to do the Hoho Flash Step mechanic on their wake up to catch you trying to meteor throw them. As stated previously in the neutral game, instead of going for the meteor this time around, you can just react with your attack the moment your opponent disappears. However, if your opponent blocks on wake up and you just finished the flash attack auto combo on their guard, you're typically very punishable. This means that you cannot block the opponent's next attack once the last hit of your flash attack auto combo finishes. Having said that, you have a few options to mitigate the disadvantage or counter a potential retaliation. You can use chain reverse to extend your pressure or use frame shafts to counter an opponent's attack. More on that later. In particular, using chain reverse to extend your pressure is great because you trickle down the opponent's guard gauge. If you deplete your opponent's guard gauge down, they will be unable to block until their gauge returns to normal. Your character might have strings that breaks the opponent's guard when at a specific threshold, so play around in training mode to see what can work. You can also frame trap the opponent after finishing your flash attack auto combo on their block. For those who don't know, frame traps are a powerful concept in fighting games where if you do an advantageous attack on the opponent's block, you get to attack before the opponent does, which causes them to get counter hit afterward if they try to attack. In Bleach Rebirth of Souls, you can very much do this. After finishing the flash attack auto combo, going into your Hakugeki attack afterward will beat people trying to attack after blocking your auto combo. This tactic only works for some of the cast, and some characters might have to delay the Hakugeki attack a little longer, or else they'll just hit the opponent's block. The characters it works for are Yamamoto, Soifan, Shinsui, Toshiro, Ikkaku, Shinji, Ichigo, Ichigo Bankai, and Noitora. The characters who have to delay their Hakugeki a bit are Byakuya, Rukia, Uryu, Nelio, Grimmjow, Okiora, Tosen, and Gin. And if you were wondering about who can't do this tactic, it's Komamura, Kenpachi, Mayuri, Kira, Renji, Shuhei, Rangiku, Shiba, Sato, Yoruichi, Urahara, Grants, Hallibell, Stark, and Aizen. Additionally, some characters' special flash attacks like Ichigo and Yamamoto can frame trap their opponents in the game by inputting their quick attack after doing a special flash attack on their block. If you want to test this situation out, go into training mode and make sure to set the dummy to always guard and always do a quick attack after blocking. Alright, so we talked about the important phases of the game, so let's talk about how to actually win. Lastly, let's talk about how to actually win in Rebirth of Souls. Your Reishi gauge is your health bar, and just like in every other fighting game, you want to whittle down the opponent's health to increase your chances of winning. Upon getting your opponent's health bar into a red color, this is your chance where you can do a Hakugeki into your Kikon move, or finish off your opponent with normal moves, which leads them into a state called Soul Break, allowing you to then kill them with your Kikon move afterward. For any viewers who played the City of Final Fantasy, it's similar to how you have to use EX moves in order to incapacitate the opponent once you reach a certain threshold. It's the same here, but with your Kikon moves. It's important to note that if the opponent tries to do a Kikon move when your guard gauge is still active and your health bar isn't in the red area, you can block them. Pretty simple, right? Well, it doesn't stop there, as you still gotta keep fighting your opponent. Similar to the Super Smash Bros. Series, Rebirth of Souls has a stock system in place called Konpaku. If you reduce the opponent's Konpaku to 0, you win the match. This is where the macro strategy of the game comes into play, as the number of stocks you reduce from the opponent depends on the current state of your character and what they are doing. To put it simply, if you kill the opponent with a super attack after doing Hakugeki, the opponent loses 2 stocks. Alternatively, if you kill the opponent with your normal attacks to put them in Soul Break state, then activate your super attack afterward, the opponent loses 3 stocks. So you're basically rewarded more for putting your opponent in Soul Break. But that's not all. In Rebirth of Souls, characters grow stronger in matches through 3 states that build up over time: Evolution, Sublimation, and Spirit Drive or Reawakening. When you enter Evolution state, you gain 1 extra stock that you can remove from the opponent and some health back, plus some buffs and damage. When you enter Sublimation, you gain another extra stock that you can remove from the opponent. To provide an example, this means that if you kill the opponent with a super attack after doing a Hakugeki while in Evolution state, the opponent loses 3 stocks now instead of the normal 2. On the other hand, if you kill the opponent with a super attack after doing a Hakugeki while in Sublimation state, the opponent loses 4 stocks now. And if you're thinking that the opponent will lose even more if they are put into Soul Break while you're in Sublimation, then you are absolutely right. It's also important to mention that some characters have unique abilities that increase how many stocks they can deduct from an opponent. Thankfully, there's an easy way to identify how many stocks you remove from the opponent. If you look near your opponent's stock number, you'll see flashing orange bars and a yellow bar. The orange bars indicate how many stocks you remove from the opponent at the moment if you kill them with a super attack after doing a Hakugeki. The yellow bar basically indicates that if you Soul Break the opponent, you'll take both the yellow and orange bars. So if you're ever confused about how many stocks you can remove from the opponent in a match, be sure to look at these bars above. I should also mention that you should look at the timer clock. When the timer gets to 0, the player with the most Konpaku stocks wins the match. So if you're ever in a situation where you have more stocks than the opponent and it's 20 seconds or less on the clock, it's really powerful to just sit back, play defensive, and not overextend. And that's all we have for you. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more fighting game guides right here at IGN.